Third, humanitarian and reconstruction efforts in Gaza. Fourth, institutional development. Fifth, halting settlement expansion and forced displacement. 6, accountability and the rule of law. 7, civil society engagement. 8, security guarantees for both people. The submissions send a clear message. The international community must act urgently and decisively to preserve the two-state vision, to uphold legal and humanitarian principles, and to move beyond expressions concerned to activating mechanisms of accountability. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Turkey, and I now invite Her Excellency Emir Higgins, Minister of State at the Department of Public Expenditure, Infrastructure, Public Service Reform and Digitalisation of Ireland and co-chair of Working Group 6.
I would like to begin at the outset by thanking France and Saudi Arabia for all of their work to date, and to all of the co-chairs and their teams for all of their work, including our own team in Ireland. I'd also like to thank Minister Yilmaz and express my appreciation to Turkey for their excellent cooperation. I'm delighted that former President of Ireland, Mary Robinson, is here with us today, and I thank her for her decades of dedication to the protection of human rights. This conference, delegates, is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to bring a renewed sense of urgency and to demonstrate a spirit of shared responsibility for seeking a political situation to this absolutely devastating conflict. The humanitarian situation in Gaza has reached new depths of despair and new depths of misery. Mass starvation is now spreading right across the population, and that is an affront to our collective humanity. We need to see an immediate ceasefire, we need to see an immediate release of hostages, and we need to see massive humanitarian aid into Gaza at scale. As co-chairs of Working Group 6, Ireland and Turkey engaged broadly with member states and stakeholders. Our working group was on the preservation of the two-state solution. We deeply appreciate the significant number of concrete and of action-orientated submissions, and there was strong agreement around the respect for international law, including international humanitarian law, and clear support for accountability mechanisms, including the International Criminal Court. Submissions reference the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice and its clear finding that the Israeli occupation of the occupied Palestinian territory is unlawful. Member states and stakeholders affirmed the two-state solution as the only pathway to a just and a lasting peace, and that is in accordance with international law and UN resolutions. The importance of recognition of the State of Palestine and its admission as a full UN member state was a recurring theme, and I commend France and President Macron for leadership on this. We also recall the importance of recognition of Israel by states who have not yet to do so, and of integration of Israel and Palestine in the region. Contributions stress there should be no forced displacement of Palestinians from Gaza, and there was strong consensus on the need to address illegal settlements in West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and strong condemnation of any attempts at annexation. There must be accountability for violent settlers and for those who support and for those who facilitate them. There must also be accountability for Hamas, who have brought only suffering to Israelis and Palestinians. A key issue is support for the Palestinian Authority, governing a unified Palestine state, support for the PA's reform agenda and sustainable financing, including the release of revenues by Israel. We acknowledge the Arab and OIC reconstruction plan as the basis for work on the rebuilding of Gaza and the necessary arrangements for governance, for security and for economic development. Submissions stressed that the essential and life-saving role and the mandate of UNRWA must be protected. As a country with experience of overcoming conflict, Ireland recognises the important role of both civil society and in particular of women in laying the groundwork for peace. We must create the conditions and the space for voices from different perspectives to be heard in safety and in respect. We must now seize this opportunity this opportunity to end the devastating cycles of violence and make good on our commitments to implement once and for all the two-state solution in the interests of both Israelis and Palestinians. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Ireland. لقد استمعنا إلى
We have heard from the co-chairs scheduled to speak under Roundtable 1. It is now my honor to invite our guest speaker, Her Excellency Mary Robinson, former President of Ireland, former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and former Chair of the Elders, to deliver the keynote address on law, legitimacy, and the long arc of peace.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to speak to you today as a member of the Elders, the group of independent leaders founded by Nelson Mandela in 2007. I'd like to thank the co-chairs, France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for convening today's conference and for the invitation. Since the Elders' founding, we've worked to support a peaceful and just resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I share the anger and despair felt by so many around the world who feel powerless to stop the atrocities we are witnessing in Gaza. The level of human suffering and destruction is unconscionable. Occupation and violence have reached new depths of inhumanity over the past 2 years, from the horrific Hamas attacks of the 7th of October 2023 and the taking of Israeli hostages, to Israel's collective punishment of Palestinians in Gaza, including indiscriminate bombardments, repeated mass displacement, and the use of starvation as a weapon of war. International norms and standards are being abandoned and openly scorned. This conference must be a turning point towards a different future. As political decision makers, you have the power and responsibility to compel a change of course. It's time for collective action, starting with recognition of the State of Palestine as a transformative step that should be taken now. Why now? Because the dehumanizing of the Palestinians by the extremist government of Israel has reached a critical point. Let us recall that Prime Minister Netanyahu telephoned Pope Leo to apologize for the injury to Father Gabriel Ramanelli when the Catholic Church was bombed in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu has not apologized for the more than 17,000 children killed in Gaza, or the many more children left without limbs and without family members. He has not apologized for all the children of Gaza who have been traumatized by this totally disproportionate war and are now hungry to the point of starvation. No apology has been deemed necessary because the children of Gaza have become dehumanized by this Israeli government. I welcome President Macron's announcement that France will recognize Palestine. The United Kingdom has said it will recognize Palestine when it would be an effective and not just a symbolic step. Surely this is the moment, because later it will simply be too late. Excellencies, I would now like to address two issues. First, measures to uphold international law and end impunity for systematic violations. And second, how to help lay the groundwork for peace. It is my personal view that we are seeing an unfolding genocide in Gaza. It is for international courts to make a final determination. But member states cannot wait for this. You must act now to prevent genocide. I must say I'm particularly impressed by the recommendations put forward here this morning by the co-chairs of working groups 7 and 6. In its advisory opinion, the International Court of Justice has found that Israel's policies and actions in the West Bank constitute annexation and breach of its international obligations on racial segregation and apartheid. For those of us who believe in international law and the United Nations Charter, the stark truth is that the government of Israel has not been held accountable for its violations in Gaza and across the occupied Palestinian territory. Its leadership enjoys a high level of impunity, and measures taken to date have not been sufficient to incentivize a change of course. This cannot continue. We have a shared duty to uphold the international rule of law and guard against the erosion of basic norms that guide conduct in wartime. There are practical steps that member states should take now to end impunity and give effect to the International Court of Justice's advisory opinion, halting arms transfers, expanding targeted sanctions, and moving to suspend trade cooperation. There must be an immediate halt to arms transfers and any military, security, or other form of cooperation which assists in maintaining Israel's unlawful presence and actions in the occupied Palestinian territory. The International Court of Justice advisory opinion clarified that Israel's security concerns do not justify its illegal presence in the West Bank and Gaza, or the annexation of territory. Self-defense cannot be invoked as justification for supplying arms when the use of force is unlawful or there is an overwhelming evidence of atrocity crimes. Ensuring the security of Israelis is central to finding a lasting solution, but this cannot be achieved when arms are used to perpetuate an unlawful occupation and atrocity crimes are fueling grievances on a colossal scale. Of course, there must also be accountability for systematic violations of international law by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups, including the continued holding of Israeli hostages. It is right that member states have strengthened sanctions against Hamas in response to its atrocity crimes against Israeli civilians. The right of the Palestinian people to resist an unlawful occupation can never justify targeting civilians in Israel. Member states should also act collectively to expand targeted sanctions against the Israeli leaders responsible for systematic violations of international law in Gaza and the West Bank. I commend the governments of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Norway, and the United Kingdom for imposing targeted sanctions in response to the dangerous rhetoric of some Israeli ministers. To achieve greater impact, governments must work together to build on this and put in place a robust set of targeted sanctions. Sanctions should continue to be strengthened against violent settlers and non-state entities funding and supporting illegal settlements. But let us be clear, it is the government of Israel that is driving settlement creation and expansion. This is not a recent initiative of a few extremist ministers. It is an enterprise that has been advanced by successive Israeli governments over many decades in clear violation of international law. Member states should expand sanctions and other measures in response to the announcement of new settlements, such as the recent revival of the E1 settlement plan, which would sever the West Bank in two. It's also high time for member states to cease any assistance to or trade with illegal settlements. I particularly welcome the recent decision of my own country, Ireland, to advance legislation on this. I urge other states to follow suit. All existing and future trade cooperation with Israel should be reviewed with a view to suspension. Maintaining preferential trade access in such a context cannot be justified. It is deeply disappointing that European Union members have still taken no collective concrete action in response to Israel's persistent violations of Article 2 of the EU-Israel Association Agreement. Excellencies, measures to end Israel's impunity, including the ICC arrest warrants, which should be enforced, are not anti-Semitic. They are a necessary response to actions of the government of Israel, which are opposed by many sections of Israeli society. The elders stand in solidarity with the growing number of Israelis who both want the hostages to be released by Hamas and the humanitarian crisis and war in Gaza to end. We are seeing acts of extraordinary courage from Israelis and Palestinians who have suffered deep trauma and loss, but who are challenging extremist narratives within their own societies, recognizing the humanity in each other, and working to forge a common vision of a shared future. Just today, 2 Israeli human rights organizations, B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights, have issued reports saying Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, and Western countries have a legal and moral duty to stop it. Creating the conditions of peace requires challenging the dehumanizing rhetoric and incitement on both sides that fuels hatred and legitimizes violence. Women have a particular role to play in peace building. In Northern Ireland, they came out of their housing estates and reached across the divide. Women are likewise at the forefront of many of the peace efforts in Israel and Palestine, leading civil society initiatives and creating partnerships for peace. At the political level, the Arab OIC plan for Gaza's reconstruction and recovery offers a pathway that can pave the way for a fully sovereign, unified Palestinian state, with an end to occupation and all forms of violence against civilians as part of a sustainable 2-state solution. Articulating this path in a way that engages both Israelis and Palestinians on the viability of an alternative, secure and hopeful future is essential. The arc of peace is indeed long in this region, but with collective action to apply international law, it bends towards justice. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now open Roundtable 2, entitled 2 States, 1 Future, Delivering Sovereignty, Guaranteeing Security for All, and Economic Viability. Joining us on the podium is His Excellency Juan Manuel Santos Calderón, former President of Colombia, 2016 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and Chair of the Elders. We warmly welcome his presence today. We will first hear interventions by the co-chairs of thematic working groups 1, 4 and 2. Immediately thereafter, we will hear an address from our guest speaker. I now invite the representative of Jordan, His Excellency Ayman Safadi, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, to take the floor.
Thank you so much, Excellencies, dear friends. Allow me to start by thanking our co-chairs, His Highness Prince Faisal and His Excellency Jean-Noël Barrot, for their leadership and for their commitment and for their relentless effort to bring us together today in what is clearly an extremely important event to express our commitment to lasting and comprehensive peace in the region. I will express Jordan's position in my intervention at the panel, but now I'll just summarize the outcome of our working group, which I had the honor of co-chairing with my dear friend, the Foreign Minister of Spain. And basically, I think what the group showed that we are all committed to a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace on the basis of the 2-state solution. We're all committed to the 2-state solution as the only path going forward. And that now is the time to act, because if we do not, realities on the ground are rendering that solution inviable as every day goes by. We, I think, agreed that recognizing the Palestinian state is a must. And to those who argue that this should be the outcome of negotiation, where are the negotiations? There is no negotiation. The Palestinians are ready to negotiate today. We do not have an Israeli partner to negotiate. So if they're not willing to sit at the table and negotiate a 2-state solution, which the whole world agrees is the path forward, then they cannot veto us from doing what we all believe in, and recognize the Palestinian state as a statement of commitment to that solution. I think majority in the group, and I thank everybody who participated in it, also expressed the importance of recognizing Palestine as a full member of our United Nations so that we can move forward. And I think it was clear among all of us that we've got to act to stop Israeli unilateral actions that undermine the two-state solution, including settlements, land confiscation, encroachments on the holy sites, and attempts to change the demographic composition of the West Bank and Gaza. That is also something that I think resonated among all of us in the group. So to sum up, I think what we all agreed on is that we've got to act and act quickly in accordance with our conviction that the two-state solution is the only path forward, and we've got to recognize Palestinian state, and we've got to take action, practical action to move in that direction. And if I may just add one element here is that if we all agree that the two-state solution is the path forward, and we all know who is the party that is preventing us from moving forward, then it is about time that the world took action against that party, which is Israel, that is not allowing the realization of the two-state solution. Again, I think we all agree that this is not time to talk, this is time to act, and we have to act efficiently and act quickly. And before I conclude, allow me just to say what I should have started with, which is the catastrophe on Gaza cannot continue. It is incomprehensible that in this day and age, all of us are failing to ensure that children eat, drink, have medicine. So I think I urge all of you to act in every way possible, to stand, to speak against the prevention of Israel of allowing aid into Gaza. That has got to stop. By the time we finish our meeting today, tens of Palestinians will have died from starvation. That cannot stand. So please, let's stand on the side of justice, stand on the right of what's right, stand on the right of international law, which our group also emphasized that must be implemented equally to all. Thank you so much.
I thank His Excellency Ayman Safadi, and I now invite the representative of Spain, His Excellency José Manuel Álvarez Bueno, Minister for Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation of Spain, co-chair of Working Group 1, to take the floor.
Thank you very much. I commend Prince Faisal and Jean-Noël Barrot for the work that they are doing. And of course, my good friend Ayman Safadi that has co-chaired this group. I will continue in Spanish. Hoy seguimos.
Today we continue to make progress on what is the only possible path towards peace in the region, and so that we don't have a repetition of this cycle of violence that we are currently witnessing, which is the worst one in the longest-standing conflict that the United Nations has on its agenda. And I'd like to recall that the first peace mission in the history of this organization was in Palestine, and we're still here in a situation that is more serious than ever. Right now we have tens of thousands of people dead, more than 100,000 people wounded, and we have to work for the implementation of the two-state solution, which is the only way to work for lasting peace in the Middle East. The working group that I co-chaired with Minister Safadi made it clear that we cannot go back to the status quo before the 7th of October. We need to flesh out the two-state solution. That is the only possible path and the objective of this conference. At the same time, there is broad agreement that we must make progress on establishing the statehood of Palestine, beginning with recognition of the state of Palestine, as 149 UN member states have already done, and also to work for its admission as a fully fledged member of this organization. It is also essential that the full normalization of relations of everyone with Israel and its full integration into the region be reaffirmed. The conclusions of the group also recall that the Palestinian Authority is the only legitimate actor to ensure the future governance of the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian Authority is our partner for peace, And we have to lay the groundwork for a realistic, viable Palestinian state with Gaza and the West Bank under a single national Palestinian Authority with territorial contiguity connected through a land corridor with access to the sea and a port in Gaza and with its capital in East Jerusalem. And in the face of the unbearable humanitarian catastrophe generated by Israel's military offensive, which has been going on for 20 months now, we clearly demand the mass unhindered entry of humanitarian assistance, its distribution in accordance with humanitarian principles and via key humanitarian actors, first and foremost the United Nations and its agencies, and in particular UNRWA. And lastly, we recognize the need to comply with international law and international humanitarian law, with resolutions of the United Nations Security Council, with the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice of the 19th of July 2024, and we cannot accept unilateral decisions that obstruct the viability of this two-state solution. We cannot accept settler violence. We cannot accept forced displacement, successive waves of forced displacement. And if there is a violation of the legal framework that we ourselves have voted for and which is binding upon all of us and also on Israel, then the relevant responsibility should be pursued. Thank you very much.
Je remercie son
I thank His Excellency José Manuel Alvarez, and I now invite the representative of Norway, His Excellency Espen Barth Eide, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Norway and co-chair of Working Group 4, to take the floor.
Thank you, dear Jean-Noël Barrot. Thank you also to His Highness Prince Faisal Al Farhan for bringing us together here and for convening this important roundtable. And together this morning we are focusing on the pillars of Palestinian statehood, the foundations for freedom and independence, a sovereign state, as Jordan and Spain just talked about, the security of Palestinians and Israelis alike, as we will hear more about afterwards, and now on the economic viability of the state. Working Group 4, which Norway has had the pleasure of leading together with our good friends from Japan, and thank you for the excellent cooperation, has been working on this theme. But all these issues, friends, are interlinked. Right now, and as laid out by Prime Minister Mustafa, there is an acute economic crisis in Palestine, threatening the very foundations of the state, the fabric of life, with the running of schools and hospitals and all public services, frankly, everything that has been built over the last 30 years. We need to stop this bleeding. Stop Israel from holding back clearance revenue transfers. Stop access and movement restrictions. Stop the expansion of settlement activities, which are confiscating land, hindering agricultural activity, and hindering trade and economic progress. While we should not bail out Israel, donors must stand by Palestine through direct support of the government in this critical situation. This is one of our group's strong recommendations. Therefore, I announce today an additional budget support of approximately $20 million US, and I call on others to do the same. But what is causing this economic crisis is not only the ongoing military activity. It is structural. It is political. With UN membership for the State of Palestine being blocked, the Palestine government does not have the same toolbox as other governments. The working group therefore supports the full integration of Palestine into the international monetary and financial system, the unification of Palestinian territory under a single governance structure is also highlighted by the group, as it would have immediate positive economic implications. And of course, the working group is clear that economic initiatives or incentives can only complement, not replace, the political process. There is no such thing as an isolated economic peace. It has to be part of a broader solution. Our discussions has drawn on earlier outcomes of the AHLC meetings, the Ad Hoc Liaison Committee, which, by the way, has been ad hoc for 31 or 32 years, and the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution, and we will continue our work in both. During the upcoming UNGA high-level week in September, Norway will call again for a ministerial HALC meeting at ministerial level, and there will be an opportunity to elaborate more on this issue. And before I end, Chair, I would like to associate myself completely with the point just made by my good friend Ayman Safadi, the Foreign Minister of Jordan, that a key message from this conference has to be that absent any real negotiations, we cannot allow the continuation of the Israeli veto. It's like a reverse walkover. If you don't turn up to the match, if you don't turn up to the negotiation, nothing happens. That cannot continue. Israel, of course, is a sovereign nation with right of full responsibility of its recognized territory, but it cannot have a veto over the lands that it illegally occupies. Here, the international community, the world, has a voice, and we must stand together to use that voice to make a clear statement with both all the political implications and all the practical detail that that entails. And thank you for the attention.
Je remercie.
I thank His Excellency Espen Barth Aid for his statement, and I now invite the representative of Japan, His Excellency Tsukasa Uemura, Special Representative of the Government of Japan and Special Envoy of the Government of Japan for Peace in the Middle East, and co-chair of Working Group 4, to take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First, we'd like to express our sincere gratitude to France and Saudi Arabia for leading this high-level conference. And also, we appreciate many meaningful contributions made by all member states and international organizations. As for our working group, I don't have much to add what His Excellency, the Norway Minister Eide-san, just described. I may touch upon only a few points. Our working group recognizes the importance of reforms led by the Palestinian Authority, and as well as how to strengthen the economic viability, macroeconomics, and fiscal foundations. In doing so, the World Bank and the international financial groups will play an indispensable role in achieving fiscal stability in Palestine. Based on this, we have identified 4 key areas for concrete action in the outcome document and have proposed some recommendations for each. For details, the document will be available I understand, in the afternoon. Dear colleagues, realizing peace in the Middle East is not only essential for regional stability, but also a matter of international peace and security. Even now, the people of Gaza are facing a severe crisis of hunger and malnutrition. It is essential that the ceasefire be restored as soon as possible. Through this high-level conference, it is vital to reaffirm the need for a two-state solution and to place this issue back at the forefront of the political agenda. Lastly, Japan will remain actively involved in the early recovery and reconstruction of Gaza, drawing our own sad experience in recovering from World War II and numerous natural disasters in the past. We are determined to continue providing tangible and meaningful assistance to the most vulnerable. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Tsukasa Uemura, and I now invite the representative of Indonesia, His Excellency Aminata Nasir, Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Indonesia and co-chair of Working Group 2, to take the floor.
Thank you, co-chairs. Excellencies, colleagues, I thank France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this meeting. We have invested significant time and efforts in building towards this high-level conference. We therefore must ensure the momentum in realizing the two-state solution is maintained after the conference, including not to veto the full membership of the State of Palestine to the UN, as stated by a number of colleagues earlier. Co-chairs, Excellencies, Indonesia is honored to co-chair with Italy Working Group 2 on security. Our inclusive and transparent approach in Working Group 2 is anchored in two central objectives. First, to identify security guarantees for Israelis and Palestinians in full respect of the sovereignty of all states. And second, to identify the scope and the task of a stabilization or protection mission deployed under the aegis of the United Nations at the request of the Palestinian Authority and backed by the UN Security Council. We have received 30 submissions from member states, international organizations, and stakeholders. Based on these inputs, Indonesia and Italy have identified 4 main topics. First, establishing credible and equal security guarantees for both parties through cessation of violence and recognition of equal rights to safety is important. This includes actions to support immediate and permanent ceasefire, a critical element for any actions to ensure the security of both peoples. Another important action that have been proposed by member states are actions to create and support a Palestinian-owned transitional authority in Gaza in line with the Arab group OIC Reconstruction Plan. Member states also propose the importance of an inclusive regional security architecture modeled after the OSCE in Europe and ASEAN in Southeast Asia to create a mechanism to nurture trust, peace in the region. Second, we need to empower the Palestinian Authority to independently manage security and fully assume responsibility in both Gaza and the West Bank, with the view of promoting reunification of all Palestinian Authority under a single, legitimate, and democratic national government. Under this element, we have gathered commitment to take action to launch a UN-led international coordination framework for initiatives aimed at developing efficient security and policing structure towards a sovereign Palestinian state. Member states also called for actions to devise a structured framework to transfer international security responsibility to the Palestinian Authority security forces. This includes actions to support the Palestinian Authority to maintain a base-level security on the ground and to ensure the safe passage of humanitarian aid. Lastly, there has been a strong consensus in restating opposition to forced displacement or changes to Gaza demographic and territorial status, as well as the rest of the OPT, including East Jerusalem. These actions are aimed to ensure a physical and normative space for the two-state solution to materialize. The 2 other elements will be presented by my fellow co-chairs from Italy. Before I conclude, however, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate France for its leadership and courageous decision to recognize the State of Palestine. At a time when persuasion fails to persuade parties to stop actions that are clearly in violation of various international law, only concrete action within one's own power and international law is needed to show the right path. Indonesia urges other countries and leaders that have not to take this momentum towards our goal in two-state solution by following the example of France. I thank you.
Je remercie son Excellence.
I thank His Excellency Al-Manata Nasir, and I invite the representative of Italy, Her Excellency Maria Tripodi, Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy, and co-chair of Working Group 2, to take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister Faisal, dear colleagues. This conference represents a collective call to action to which the Italian government has committed with resolve and determination, and we thank Saudi Arabia and France for having promoted this. The continuation of military operations, the dire humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, as well as Hamas' rejection of the latest negotiating proposal, and the instability in the West Bank pose a very serious task that is crucial, however. We have co-chaired together with Indonesia the Working Group on Security, which I believe is central to the two-state perspective. Addressing the security needs of both Israelis and Palestinians is a prerequisite for any political progress and is the cornerstone of regional stability. I would like to thank all UN member states, the European Union, the Arab League, civil society, and the Palestinian Authority for their valuable contributions, 30, that came to our group. We immediately agreed with our Indonesian colleagues a basic premise. Just as there can be no peace without security, there can be no security without peace. That's why the third focus of our work is on confidence building between Israelis and Palestinians, recognizing that a solid security architecture must be grounded in policy, in agreements and negotiations, and not solely on military arrangements. It's an ambitious project, but not undoable, as shown by the effective deployment of the EU's U-bomb Rafah mission during the ceasefire. Ensuring the feasibility of the concrete actions outlined earlier by Deputy Minister Nasir requires the engagement from regional actors in the international community. Tasked with defining the purpose and mandate of a stabilization and protection mission of the UN, the group's fourth and final topic concerned international protection mechanisms and the role of the UN. The consent of both parties, the invitation of the Palestinian Authority, and a Security Council resolution are essential conditions for any stabilization mission in Gaza and for any monitoring effort in the West Bank. The work carried out with Indonesia and other member states has followed a phase strategy with short, medium, and long-term goals, allowing flexibility in our work and always keeping in mind potential developments on the ground. We are ready to work with Indonesia and others to implement the identified actions. Our immediate priorities are a ceasefire and humanitarian access. Strengthening the institutions and security capabilities of the Palestinian Authority is yet another short-term goal. Italy firmly believes that the two-state solution represents the meeting point between Israel's security needs and the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people. Only from a Gaza Strip free of Hamas and reunited with the West Bank under a reformed and empowered Palestinian Authority can we see a genuine reconstruction process in line with what was proposed by the Arab Islamic peace plan. Reconstruction means not just physical infrastructure, buildings, schools, hospitals, but most importantly, rebuilding trust between Israelis and Palestinians. I would like to therefore conclude by stressing the importance of aligning international support with the work of the civil societies of Israel and Palestine, the only true guarantee of a lasting and stable peace in the long term. Thank you.
Je remercie son...
I thank Her Excellency Maria Tripodi for her statement. We've now heard from the co-chairs scheduled to speak under Roundtable 2. It's now my honor to invite our guest speaker for Roundtable 2, His Excellency Juan Manuel Santos Calderon, former President of Colombia, 2016 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and Chair of the Elders, to deliver the keynote address on delivering peace, political resolution, shared security, and economic prosperity.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to address this conference today in my capacity as Chair of the Elders, and would like to thank the conference co-chairs for the opportunity to speak to this distinguished audience. Recognition of the State of Palestine can be a transformative step towards peace at a time when the region is consumed by terrible war. I encourage the remaining UN member states who have not already done so to take this step now. I commend President Macron for announcing that France will recognize Palestine. I urge the United Kingdom, a country for which I have a special gratitude for its support of the Colombian peace agreement and as penholder in the Security Council, to join France in leading the way. I took this decision in 2018 as President of Colombia. I did so not to favor one side over the other, but to help create a level playing field, convinced then, as I am now, that it is for the best in the long run, also for the Jewish people, for whom I have always expressed admiration and respect. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same for the current Israeli government. As I said at the time, just like the Palestinian people have a right to build an independent state, the people of Israel have a right to live in peace next to their neighbors. Now, it is more important than ever to achieve this, following the horrific Hamas terror attacks against Israeli civilians on 7th of October 2023, and the current government of Israel's atrocity crimes against Palestinians in Gaza that we're all witnessing today. In words and deeds, Prime Minister Netanyahu's government openly expresses its intent to prevent a Palestinian state ever coming into existence. It is pursuing a greater Israel through the destruction of Gaza, an illegal settlement expansion, and annexation of the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. At this crucial moment, recognition of the State of Palestine by even more countries would send a clear signal to the Israeli people that this expansionist agenda will never be accepted by the international community, and it does not serve their true interest. I urge member states to stand with the many, many Israelis who reject this dangerous path and who understand that their own security depends on the security and self-determination of Palestinians. Some will always make the argument that the time is not yet right. At this critical juncture, the case for recognition has never been more pressing. The time is now. Recognizing Palestine along pre-1967 lines can be a catalytic act towards the vision of two states with a shared future, if there is sustained political commitment to follow through on its implementation. This is about the core principles of justice and self-determination. Recognition should not be linked to negotiations between the conflict parties. Israel does not have the right to veto Palestinian self-determination or statehood. Nor should recognition be linked to governance reform or the form that a sovereign, unified Palestinian state will take. These are separate issues from statehood itself. The question of when and how Hamas should disarm or be disarmed is, with no doubt, critical. I know from my own experience of ending a more than 50-year-old war in Colombia how delicate but essential such a process can be. The disarmament of Hamas will need to be addressed as part of a process towards a lasting political settlement that ends the occupation and ensures security for both people. For Hamas to have any political future, it must be willing to reconcile under the umbrella of a revitalized Palestinian Liberation Organization based on fundamental commitments, including recognition of Israel along pre-1967 lines and an end to attacks against civilians. Like any other state, the state of Palestine must have full control of its own borders, territory, and security arrangements. A two-state solution will not be viable or sustainable if Palestinians are offered a reduced form of statehood that falls short of full sovereignty. For too long, the security of the occupying power, Israel, has been prioritized over the security of Palestinians. This is obvious from the continuous flow of arms to Israel, while the civilian population of Gaza suffers endless bombardments and a siege that has led to an imminent man-made famine. Distinguished co-chairs and distinguished delegates, I know from my country's own experience of conflict with the FARC and other armed groups that it can seem easier to wage war than to make peace. But such intractable conflicts can never be resolved by military means alone. Today, I urge you all to take a firmer stand against military aggression in Gaza and the West Bank, but also in the wider region. The situation remains extremely fragile following the military strikes against Iran by Israel and the USA, which deliberately derailed progress towards a political solution to the Iran nuclear threat and led to a dangerous escalation. It is vital to preserve space for political dialogues on this issue. European governments should negotiate a delay to the UN sanctions snapback deadline, and Iran should restore the International Atomic Energy Agency access. Any UN Security Council resolution underpinning a new agreement must also provide guarantees to Iran against further strikes. The government of Israel's military action in Syria since the fall of Assad also undermines regional stability. This is not legitimate self-defense. The use of force to assert Israel's domination in the region risks leading to a dangerous endgame. This is relevant to our discussions today because it directly undermines prospects for a two-state solution. We need a new vision for regional peace and security, one that is based on political, not military solutions, and respect for each state's sovereignty. A comprehensive regional framework must be inclusive of Iran as well as the Arab states. It must have a lasting settlement that safeguards a fully sovereign state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel at its heart. Only a framework in which all states in the region have an equal stake can provide lasting peace. Like others, the elders want to see a regional security context in which Israel has normalized relations with its neighbors and is recognized by all countries in the world. However, normalization through the pursuit of more Abraham Accords without self-determination for Palestinians will only sow the seeds of future conflict, ultimately undermining Israel's own security. Full normalization must be conditional on Israel's ending the occupation with recognition and realization of a sovereign Palestinian state along the pre-1967 lines. To make progress towards such a vision, it is likely that a regional or international presence will be required to support a ceasefire in Gaza and the transitional governance and security arrangements that will follow. Any such regional and international presence should be based on the consent of the Palestinian Authority and endorsed by the UN. It should be established in both Gaza and the West Bank to ensure that it paves the way for a unified, sovereign Palestinian state. Recognition of the state of Palestine by member states can be transformative if it is accompanied by practical measures to make statehood a reality. This includes support for Palestinian economic sovereignty and prosperity, ending the movement and access restrictions that constrain economic development, and opening up the potential for cooperative arrangements between Israel and the future state of Palestine to address shared challenges such as public health, water resources, and the climate crisis. Excellencies, I would like to conclude by recalling Nelson Mandela's words nearly 30 years ago when I went to give him the chair of the 9th UNCTAD conference, when he told me that without peace, Colombia will never take off. His words inspired me to commit to delivering peace in my country and in the world, and still inspire me today. That is the reason I am here. This conference offers a tangible opportunity to catalyze progress towards political resolution by recognizing Palestine and developing a new vision for shared security and sustainable economic prosperity for Palestinians, Israelis, and the wider region. I urge you all to seize this moment. Thank you.
Je remercie son...
I thank His Excellency Juan Manuel Santos Calderon.
Merci.
I now announce Roundtable 3, entitled From Rubble to Renewal, Rebuilding Lives, Realizing the Promise of Independence, and a Future of Shared Peace, Security, and Prosperity. Joining us on the podium is His Highness Prince Zaid Ra'ad Al Hussein, former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, and we warmly welcome his presence with us today. We'll first hear interventions by the co-chairs of thematic working groups 5 and 8, and I now give the floor to His Excellency the Foreign Minister of the Arab Republic of Egypt and the co-chair of Working Group 5. You have the floor, sir.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, Your Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Your Excellency Minister Jean-Noël Barrot, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the French Republic, Your Highness Prince Raad, ladies and gentlemen, allow me at the outset to express my extreme gratitude for your participation in today's meeting at the beginning of the conference on the peaceful political settlement of the Palestinian question and the implementation of the two-state solution. Here I'd like to express my special thanks to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and to the Republic of France for co-chairing this conference and for their keenness to convene it at this very delicate and dangerous moment in our region's history. And I also like to thank all the countries that participated in the working groups. Their valuable participation and contributions will undoubtedly have a great impact in ensuring the success of our joint efforts in this conference. Distinguished guests, the importance of our meeting today is not simply limited to expressing our interest in a just and comprehensive peaceful settlement of the central issue in the Middle East, namely the question of Palestine. Rather, our meeting today gains importance from our success in reaching the broadest possible international consensus on the practical steps needed to establish a Palestinian state on the 4 June 1967 lines, with East Jerusalem as its capital, a state living in peace and security side by side with Israel. Here, Egypt, and through its participation in the co-chairmanship of the Fifth Working Group alongside the United Kingdom, we took care to incorporate all the contributions received and formulate them with the utmost balance between all the different visions, while presenting our own vision with regards to the disastrous humanitarian situation in the occupied territories, be they in the West Bank or the Gaza Strip. This is a vision that we believe has won the acceptance and support of the majority of the countries participating in the Humanitarian Action Working Group as one of the main pillars of any practical action aimed at providing the objective conditions necessary for the establishment of a Palestinian state, which is based on supporting the steadfastness of the Palestinian people on their land in light of the rights guaranteed to them by international law and international humanitarian law, foremost of which is the protection and enjoyment of basic services, at the forefront of which is the right to life and the right to unfettered humanitarian aid. Therefore, Egypt has intensified its efforts to put an end to the war in Gaza and to put an end to the humanitarian catastrophe that civilians are subjected to by allowing the resumption of humanitarian aid to Gaza, where Egypt is one of the major contributors of this humanitarian aid, and we are working with our brethren in Qatar and friends in the United States to achieve this. Egypt has continued to support the efforts of UNRWA in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories and the rest of its areas of operation by maintaining the mandate granted to the agency by the United Nations General Assembly or its work throughout the occupied Palestinian territories. Egypt reaffirms its intention to cooperate with international partners and to organize a conference for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip as soon as a ceasefire agreement is reached. This aims to implement the Arab-Islamic Plan for Early Recovery and Reconstruction. The implementation of this plan would contribute to ending the humanitarian crisis that the people of Gaza are experiencing quickly and effectively after more than 20 months of brutal aggression. Egypt provides security training programs to the Palestinian Authority's forces so that they would be able to enforce the law in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank in a manner in cooperation with Jordan. This training would contribute to the creation of an environment that would allow for the establishment of a contiguous Palestinian state. And here we welcome the announcement by French President Macron a courageous announcement of France's recognition of the State of Palestine in September, and we call upon all international parties to do the same. Let us together save the two-state solution by recognizing the Palestinian state and by not giving the veto to one party here. In closing, we'd like to express our sincere gratitude to the co-chairs of the conference and to the United Kingdom for the excellent coordination with Egypt in presiding over the working group on humanitarian action and reconstruction. And we thank all the countries and organizations that have contributed effectively to this effort through their valuable proposals. We wish this conference success, and we hope that together we will succeed in putting an end to this humanitarian disaster that has not been witnessed since World War II. The starvation and the systemic killing, the use of hunger as a weapon of war, of collective punishment, and a blatant violation of international law and international humanitarian law. I thank you.
أشكر معالي وزير خارجية جمهورية.
I thank Egypt for their remarks. I give the floor now to the Vice Minister for the Middle East and North Africa of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Your Highness. The United Kingdom was honoured to co-chair the working group on humanitarian action and reconstruction with our esteemed friends in Egypt. We're grateful to all those who contributed. Our discussions reflected a shared sense of outrage at the scale of human suffering. The humanitarian pause in fighting is essential, but long overdue. This must be kept in place and lead to a lasting ceasefire that brings the war to an end, allows hostages to be freed, and ensures aid can get into Gaza without obstruction. The working group heard a clear message that Israel must uphold international humanitarian law, protect civilians, and stop obstructing aid. It clearly rejected the misuse of aid for military or political ends and any attempts at demographic or territorial change. The United Nations must be allowed to save lives, to reduce suffering, and preserve dignity. There was strong support amongst the group for UNRWA, which faces a $200 million shortfall. The UK is acting to alleviate suffering. The Foreign Secretary has announced an additional $54 million in humanitarian assistance, including $27 million for UNRWA. We're working with international partners to fund joint aid projects, ensuring that assistance reaches those in the most desperate need. Contributors to the group also affirm their commitment to secure a better future for Israelis and Palestinians alike. We want to see meaningful steps towards a viable, independent Palestinian state alongside a safe and secure Israel. Beyond the immediate humanitarian crisis, Gaza's recovery needs will be vast. Getting the right approach will be crucial to ensure a two-state solution remains possible. And so the UK is mobilising support for the Arab-Islamic Reconstruction Plan, building consensus on the security and governance needed for its implementation. Many in the working group echoed our view, and that of President Abbas, that Hamas must be removed from governance, disarmed, and renounce violence. We are committed to inclusive governance in Gaza, led by Palestinians, and we will expand technical assistance to the Palestinian Authority to support recovery and reconstruction. Meanwhile, we stand ready to coordinate international donor support and harness the power of the private sector. This includes co-chairing a conference with the PA and Egypt in October on innovative financing. Before concluding, I'd like to add that the UK reads the conference's outcome document in a way that is consistent with our own findings on compliance with international humanitarian law. As we look to the future, this is the moment for us to unite around an alternative plan for Gaza and take urgent and tangible steps towards a two-state solution. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency, the representative of the United Kingdom. أعطي الكلمة الآن
I give the floor now to the representative of the European Union, the European Commissioner for the Mediterranean and the co-chair of Work Group 8.
Excellencies, the European Union is honored to lead with the Arab League partners the work on Peace Day effort. By working together on this vision for the day after, we lay the ground for it to become a reality. In my capacity as co-chair representing the European Union, I will now report on the numerous contributions received and the working group conclusions with 3 important measures that gathered positive feedback. And I will try to be concrete. First, there is a clear need for a phased, conditional, and multidimensional actionable peace-supporting package. This package would be rolled out immediately after an agreement on a negotiated 2-state solution by the parties grounded in international law. Support to the Palestinian Authority is key. The European Union is already the largest assistance provider for the Palestinian Authority. I myself recently approved a 1.6 billion euro support package for 2025 to 2027 linked to structural reforms. We offered concrete ideas to elaborate our long-standing offer to provide an unprecedented package of political, security, and economic support for both parties. I'm currently working up to set up a Palestinian donor group. This donors group should serve as a forum to support the Palestinian Authority's reform agenda, a place where donors can follow the reforms carried out and exchange views on how best to support the Palestinian Authority, as well as pledge their financial support. It will also serve as a concrete instrument to facilitate discussions on the recovery and reconstruction of Gaza. Second, we need to develop a regional security architecture for the Middle East. All necessary security guarantees will have to be provided to the parties. These will have to take into account sovereignty as well as the legitimate security concerns of Israel that cannot and must not be ignored. The full respect by all actors of international law is a must, including international humanitarian law and international human rights law. I also want to underline that many member states have mentioned the possibility of OSCE-inspired regional security model or other regional integration initiatives. And third, this conference must mandate a follow-up mechanism to implement its agenda. The Global Alliance for the Implementation of the 2-state solution stands out as an existing mechanism open to all and fit for purpose. It already includes more than 100 states and international organizations. The European Union and the League of Arab States are encouraging all states to actively take part in this alliance. It appears best suited to take forward the important work initiated in the 8 working groups. Excellencies, once again, in my capacity as representative of the European Union, I must reiterate the Union's unwavering support and commitment both to peace and to the 2-state solution. We are already doing much to achieve these goals. In simple terms, we are keeping the Palestinian Authority from financial collapse. And we have stepped up our engagement to reach a ceasefire and improve access for humanitarian support. Regarding the humanitarian situation in Gaza, we have laid a framework to allow goods to enter Gaza to stop civilian suffering. But the framework was only partially implemented due to an ability to distribute the goods in a safe and organized environment. We expect Israel to deliver on agreement, which is not the case at the moment. We are fully committed to achieving lasting peace in the region and supportive in accordance with the international law of the 2-state solution. We want to see Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security within recognized borders. And to conclude, thank you very much, both Saudi Arabia and France for convening this important conference. looking forward to paving the way for the conference in September and to act as soon as possible in the most concrete way. Thank you so much.
I thank the representative of the European Union. I give the floor now to the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, Mr. Ahmed Abul Ghait.
Thank you. Thank you, Prince Faisal bin Farhan. Excellencies, our group has been focused on Peace Day effort, on what could be ensue, what other parties may offer for the Palestinians and the Israelis and for the region at large. Should a two-state solution be implemented and an independent, sovereign, and viable Palestinian state see the light of day? We received contributions from states, organizations, and civil society that attested to the fact that envisioning peace, just and comprehensive peace, is a possibility. A different regional reality is not a dream or an indulgence in delusional optimism. The major takeaway from the contributions we received is that a different future for the Middle East, one that is based on justice, respect, and tolerance, is possible and desirable. Another obvious conclusion is that such future will never materialize so long as the occupation and the apartheid system persist in Gaza and the West Bank. A new Middle East will never emerge from the suffering of the Palestinians, nor from the starvation, deportation, and the total suppression of the legitimate rights and aspirations of a people who are, like all other peoples, worthy of self-determination in the state of their own. Over the last months, the Palestinians have been subjected to the crime of our time, a genocide, something the world has not seen in this century. The flame that started in Gaza moved to set fire in the whole region in a matter of weeks. Regional war reared its ugly head, and the security situation deteriorated. A full-blown regional confrontation erupted with the dire consequences for the Middle East and the whole world at large. The lesson can be more obvious. There is no way to contain the Palestinian question in a box and pretend that regional peace and security could be maintained. Such an approach has been tried and failed, time and again. In the same vein, peace will never be achieved through perceived military supremacy. Military operations could bring lulls and temporary truces and best but no permanent peace. 23 years ago, the Arab Peace Initiative envisioned a different path: full Israeli withdrawal from the Arab-occupied territories since 1967. In return for the full normalization, that is a vision for permanent peace and coexistence, a vision for integration and security for all. It has been on the table for the 20 last years, with no response whatsoever from Israel. The Peace Day effort builds on both peace support package by the European Union and the Arab Peace Initiative. It draws inspiration from their main ideas and basic promise. Only as a result of ending the occupation, advancing regional peace could be possible. Thank you very much.
أشكر معالي أمين عام.
I thank the Secretary General of the League of Arab States for his remarks. With that, we have heard from the co-chairs scheduled to speak under Roundtable 3. It is now my honor to invite our guest speaker of Roundtable 3, His Highness Prince Zayed Ra'ad Al Hussein, former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, to deliver the keynote address on humanitarian imperative, rebuilding with dignity, accountability, and regional vision.
Thank you, Your Highness, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear friends. I am grateful to be joining Presidents Mary Robinson and Juan Manuel Santos as the third external speaker to this morning's session, and would like to begin by thanking our distinguished co-chairs, France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, not only for their leadership on this topic, but also for their insistence. This conference centers on specific actions needed to realize a two-state solution. Our co-chairs are also right to think the greatest threat to the viability of a two-state solution is a staggering international community that lacks an understanding of either what a workable two-state solution actually entails or of the path we must all take to get there once the terrible atrocities in Gaza stop. In other words, how can we transition from rubble to renewal without a compelling and credible vision for what renewal means? Others may argue this differently, claiming the main obstacle to peace is not so much the violent extremists on both sides who demand the complete removal or destruction of the other. That perhaps is too obvious a point. Rather, it is the filing down in both societies of those who would believe peace is possible. Such is the depth of fear, anger, and fatalism that now marks the prevailing mood. After all, virtually all Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, and